When they see a man that's, let's say, jacked and in shape, they immediately think predator. They immediately think he's against me rather than thinking, oh, good, I'm glad he's strong and competent. This is a huge disconnection between the way women who are raised with fathers and are more likely to be conservative look at masculinity and the way broken women look at male existence. Huge separation. The problem is that one is correct and one is not correct. Ultimate skepticism and perversion of the masculine spirit has resulted in the broken culture that the left now inhabits, where 31% of people are approving of the Democrat platform right now, where degenerate femininity was literally vanquished because it couldn't take on any redeeming qualities, frankly, in the election, and everything that it embodied was incoherent, deceptive, malignant, and perverse. And so it was just judged thusly as all of those things and basically transcended. The problem is that the left doesn't believe in the mechanisms that allowed us to do that, like logic, reason, or rationality, and in fact demonize those things as constructs used to oppress them the same way masculinity oppresses them. The men are back in charge of our military, and they're being celebrated rather than resented for their masculine competence. The left, as I pointed out in my last video, wages war against masculine competence because masculinity is an apparatus which embodies reality. And so, in the left's distrust, resentment, ultimate skepticism towards any system of coherence or order, inevitably and persistently wars with masculinity. The new SecDef, Secretary of Defense, is making a point of going out of his way to highlight men who typically just stand in the shadows doing their dangerous, dirty jobs without any glory, without any recognition. Basically, the men you never see or hear about unless you go out of your way to watch Sean Ryan episodes. But the Secretary of Defense has gone from this on the right to this. And he's working out with these guys. He's training with them. He's one of them, in fact. Now, this video is titled something like Why Women Are Afraid of Strong Men. And I'm going to explain why this unfounded and corrupt instinct towards this competent masculinity got here. And I'm going to explain why the left holds this position. It's really quite an infantilized perspective that ends up facilitating female incompetence, platforming it. Examples of that are like this right here, where we have footage of FBI agents, a female FBI agent, pointing her firearm into the crib of an infant. Because for 4 years, the FBI was weaponized against Trump supporters, almost exclusively. And when we saw these egregious displays of pathetic corruption and incompetence, because you have to be incompetent to do something like this, it was almost always women at the forefront of these heinous displays. The FBI should not be a political organization, and yet they were bowing a knee to BLM repeatedly. Look, these are all women. All of these people are literally women in the FBI. Look at this, closer up. This is a disgrace. But the inevitable outcome when you demonize competent male masculinity. The reason why the left favors and facilitates female incompetence, platforms it, and even rewards it is because it's sort of like a way to spite reality. It's a way to remind everyone in their cult and outside of their cult that they're against this, whatever this is, whatever these displays of masculine competence are, they're against this because this is the archetype in their mind of tyranny. In the leftist psyche, which is starkly feminine, there is no archetypal model of male competence, generosity, and productiveness. There is only the archetype of the male tyrant who is corrupt and predatory. This is why the left fundamentally despises displays of masculinity, and why so often women who are exploited by the left-wing ideology and brought into that cult of identitarianism don't have fathers, because they have no archetype represented in their mind of what it means to be a good, strong, generous, competent man. It's a tragedy, but the left is actually built on this misunderstanding. The left is built on this inadequacy and relies on telling women that order itself references this structure of corruption and predatory instinct that is leveraged against them to oppress them and victimize them, something like that, and that they are perpetual victims of this state of order and manifested competence. This is the reason why leftists can't stand competent men, or maybe in some cases can't stand is too strong of a word, but it irks them, it bothers them. It's like an itch. When they see a man that's, let's say, jacked and in shape, they immediately think predator. They immediately think he's against me rather than thinking, oh, good, I'm glad he's strong and competent. This is a huge disconnection between the way women who are raised with fathers and are more likely to be conservative look at masculinity and the way broken women look at male existence. Huge separation. The problem is that one is correct and one is not correct. Ultimate skepticism and perversion of the masculine spirit has resulted in the broken culture that the left now inhabits, where 31% of people are approving of the Democrat platform right now, where degenerate femininity was literally vanquished because it couldn't take on any redeeming qualities, frankly, in the election, and everything that it embodied was incoherent, deceptive, malignant, and perverse. And so it was just judged thusly as all of those things and basically transcended. The problem is that the left doesn't believe in the mechanisms that allowed us to do that, like logic, reason, or rationality, and in fact, demonize those things as constructs used to oppress them the same way masculinity oppresses them. This is a problem, though, because men and women need each other, and not just in the cliche way of, oh, we complement each other, but masculinity, quite technically, as an apparatus for embodying objective reality, which is the superpower men have. That's the reason why masculinity is differentiated from femininity, because femininity is not about objective reality. It's about emotion. It's about the nuances of the world that is not quite so rational. But when women are deprived of this archetype of this apparatus for objective reality, then they end up being incoherent and insane while demonizing objective reality itself, which is exactly what you see going on in the culture today and what the left preys on constantly. This is very important to understand. There is a clear and overt aversion that the left has towards male competence, because when they look at this image, for instance, they don't see dedicated, industrious men that have gone through enormous suffering that they could never imagine, much less go through themselves, and that these men are willing to put their lives on the line to defend their freedom. There are thousands, tens of thousands of men like this that are willing to put their life on the line to defend the freedom of people who hate them, who despise them, who slander them, and hold contempt for them. That's how much these guys are heroes compared to the people who despise them and have a misunderstanding. So that there's no equality here. These guys are just clearly occupy a much more advanced condition of existence than these people who are broken. But when you look at the way the left views this, which is, oh my gosh, they're basically just corrupt men that would mansplain something to me, rather than they are literally masculine heroes who stand in the night with weapons to protect you against people who want you dead, and will do dangerous and life-threatening things which you would not do and are not capable of. And given that, perhaps a little gratitude is in order. And this doesn't just go for women, but for men. The thing is the reason I'm not talking about men here is because when men have this misunderstanding, we just bully them for not embodying objective reality like these men, because men are held to the standard of you have to be rational, whereas we give women this out of being emotional because they're feminine. Oh, you don't understand why these men are actually good for you. You don't understand why they're protecting you, et cetera, et cetera. You don't understand what these men actually embody because you're just being irrational. But the problem is it goes much deeper than irrationality. It goes to the sickness of having no functional archetype of competent, just, generous, reciprocal masculinity. And that's also why, of course, many of these women on the left are perpetually single, because they just demonize masculinity as blanketly bad, which of course is reprehensible. That is evil. It would be just as evil as blanketly demonizing femininity. But the left does have a substantial problem here. I mean, this is really This is really bad. This is really, really bad. And of course, this was facilitated and perpetuated by the leftist regime. So now that that's over, everything is better, objectively speaking. But given women's war with objective reality, it's not quite so simple. Understand these are fundamentally different archetypes. These are fundamentally different ways of viewing the world. It's not just that they're crazy. See, that's a true statement that they're crazy, but we have to have higher resolution understandings of what's going on so that we can combat what's going on effectively. Leftists are not called to believe in the objective world. Leftists are not called to have responsibility for ideas that are coherent. Leftists are not called to hold virtue as it is derivative of objective reality. They are instead called to claim virtue no matter what as a result of their identity category. And that's the reason why identity is the most important thing. The reason why their SecDef, their Secretary of Defense, had to have rainbow flags and wear masks and make soldiers wear masks. And they despise competent men who work out with the most competent men in our military. It makes me so happy to see this because this is basically just Sean Ryan come to the mainstream. And Sean Ryan is like top 5 podcasts on Spotify, so he's pretty mainstream anyway, but you know what I mean. When competent, just, generous, productive masculinity is demonized, there is no way back, technically speaking, for those who war with reality, because masculinity encapsulates the elements of objective reality that would be the antidote to such a sickness. If you appreciate my analysis, subscribe to the channel. I really thought that this would be an important video to put out today because you see this everywhere. It's incredibly important. Share this with women in your life because they've gotten away too long with not taking responsibility for their incorrect worldviews, their objectively insufficient ways of thinking. And you are not a corrupt perpetrator. You are not some tyrant for showing them reality and challenging them and telling them they need to do better. Women need to do better. It's a fact. And if you want to support what I'm doing here, click the link in description. Since we're demonetized, YouTube doesn't like truth. Scroll down and become a member. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you tomorrow.